welcome to Everyday Board Games. Here back with another review. This time, Return to Dark Tower from Restoration Games.
And as always, I start this off with a caveat. I bought this game, so I can say what I want about it.
Yep, that's right. While we'll put some of our bias in, we do our best on our reviews to take our bias out of it, because we have 5 different criteria that we actually rank these games on. The first one is ease of play,
Replay value,
meaningful choice,
game immersion,
and art and production. And we use these criteria, and we'll break them down into more detail later on, but we use these so we can take our bias out of it when giving a review. For each of these 5 criteria, Daniel and I can each give it 1 point. We call each of those points a Daniel, thus giving it anywhere from a 0 to 10 Daniel scale.
Sounds good to me. Return to Dark Tower it's kind of hard to describe. It's campaign light, it's dungeon crawling, it's got scenarios where you got to beat a certain amount of stuff. It's got a lot going for it, but it has one of the coolest pieces that you'll ever get in a board game. And
Yes.
It's a Bluetooth tower that is the Dark Tower.
That's right, yeah. This is a remake of a game from the 80s that used to have like a little touchpad. If you think of like the Speak and Spell, it had like a rubber or like a plastic film over it, and it had buttons underneath that. That's kind of what the original one did, and it only had like really one scenario. Like it wasn't even a scenario, it was just the game. And it would give you like sometimes random events and trigger different things as you're trying to defeat the Dark Tower. Restoration Games, they came along and they're known to remake games and restore them now to industry standards, if not far exceeding that. Was specifically, you'll see that in our review here probably. But yeah, they take the older games and they remake them to a modern audience.
And what I like about this one is the original Dark Tower was strictly a competitive game.
Yeah.
This one, the main way they want you to play it as the co-op mode, but they still have the competitive aspect into it. So for the old fans of the Dark Tower that want to have that competitive nature, you can still have it. But they really went into the story co-op version of the game.
Very good. So let's begin with our first criteria, ease of play. So ease of play. When we talk about ease of play, we talk about 3 things. We talk about how simple and familiar the mechanisms are. The likelihood to get it to the table, whether it's based on the theme or the mechanism, or is it easy to learn, understand, or teach? And for this one, first off, I think they do a really good job of making it easy to learn. It is based off of an older game, which tend to be just like roll and move, kind of easy stuff. And this, it has a little bit more going for it, but I feel like, generally speaking, you have a banner action, which is just a little buff that you get at the beginning. Mm-hmm. You take a movement, up to like a few number of spaces, or possibly doubling it if you spend it. Then you either do like a reinforcement or a heroic action or whatever they're called. And that's it for your turn. You drop a skull on the top of the tower, and that's more or less it. And again, they prefer you to play it cooperative, and that helps out a lot of players. Whenever we have a group, if there's somebody new, if somebody's at least somewhat familiar with it, it's easy to teach them because they get to learn while playing, which a lot of people are more hands-on in that experience. Now, as far as likelihood to get to the table, it can be daunting because it looks very intimidating. But I feel like because of how cool the component is, if you're in the industry, you already have heard how awesome this thing is, and you're like, I just want to see what that's about.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like playing a video game in that aspect. So I feel like this gets Daniel from me.
For me, when it comes to ease of play, the simplicity and the familiarity of the mechanism, I'm familiar with the original Dark Tower. I never played it. My brothers were more of a Hero Quest kind of people.
I used to own it.
Yeah, so that's there. And people tie it into the Stephen King series, The Dark Tower. So there's all that stuff. Now, is it likelihood to get to the table? That's where I'm hemming and hawing about. Because I don't think it is. As cool as it is and how cool that piece is, if I'm taking it to my grandma's house, they're going to look at it and be like, you brought something too complicated for us, and they won't do it. And so that's how I'm going with this one. I don't think it's going to get a Daniel because my one issue with it, yes, it's you got this, you got that, you got this. But every character plays a little different. They're a bit asymmetric. They have their own powers. So it's hard to tell someone how their character specifically plays, especially if they're a newer character or a newer player for that matter and not used to asymmetry. And the fact is, I've played this multiple times, and I still have to reference the rulebook every now and then, even though it's simple as you would think.
Yeah.
So I can't give it a Daniel on ease of play.
Fair enough. Next category is going to be replay value.
And when we're talking about replay value, we're talking about the length and time and scaling well, the minimum number of plays for the full experience, in the expandability, which includes already existing expansions, up to one possible future expansions, or expansions that have been confirmed by the designer or publisher. And for me, for the reasons why I couldn't give the Daniel an ease of play, I am wholeheartedly giving the Daniel here in the replay value. The length of time is scaling well. It's going to be a long game regardless if you're playing 2 or 4 people, because it's all based on the scenario in the app integration.
Yeah.
Because especially if you've somehow got the final boss to come out, you don't know how many attacks you need to get on the final boss. The app knows everything there. So it could be an hour game, it could be a 2-hour game. And the one thing I have to say about this game, it's one of the few games out there, no matter how long you're playing the game, you're not realizing how long you've played the game. You're invested in this game. You're really into it. And so when it comes to the length of time, if you're not paying attention to the time, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So that gets the Daniel for me. The minimum number of plays of the full experience. You can randomize everything. You can pick your bosses. You can pick the characters. So you can pick your poisons. I haven't played with this character. Now this thing is going in here. And the big thing, the expandability. There is now 2 expansions for this game. So that adds a little bit more, adds more difficulty, however you want to play it. So yes, this gives it Daniel for me.
Okay, and then on top of mind, our viewer brought this up, Illuminous, that it is app integrated, and a lot of this, you could get digital expansions for it. You could just download content additionally for it, different scenarios that use the same stuff. You don't need physical components to be able to replay it even more than it had when it originally came out. And that's one of the coolest parts about it. You have different modes, solo mode, cooperative mode, and versus mode, and over multiple different scenarios, different battles, different bad guys, different things that you could do in the game. Replay value, wholeheartedly. Anybody who gets into it, once you get past that first play, you're like, I want to try it again and again. And that's what replay value is all about. So this gets a Daniel for me as well.
And next up here, we have meaningful choice, impact on other players, depth of strategy, tactics, or skills, and do arbitrary choices or AP make an impact on this game. And this one is kind of weird for me. I mean, it is the chock full of meaningful choice in this game. You got to be smart about it, and I think I am going to give it a Daniel, because when it comes down to like the arbitrary choices and the AP and stuff like that, there's not a lot of AP in this game. But the arbitrary choices are based on what the tower decides to do to you. Right. In all honesty, you have really no mitigation for that, because your only thing for sure to make sure the game keeps going is you got to clean up the skulls that are on the table for you, or on the board. This way you have skulls to drop into the tower. That's one of the things. And so, so it's interesting on that, but there is so much strategy in here that your character works one way. So if I'm playing the Brutal Warlord, I think is the character's name, I'm all about accruing soldiers to throw them in waves at the monsters, and so I'm trying to clean up the board while someone else is trying to get the skulls out of the territory and stuff like that. You have to be careful, because you can only take so many I forget what the term is, but corruption, or else you lose the game. And you lose corruption when your buildings in your certain section of the area gets destroyed. So you're like, I need to mitigate this. Can someone come over here and clean this out? Because I can't take another corruption. I'm all the way on the other side of the board protecting them from the monsters over here. And so there is a lot of strategic choice that you have to do. And when it goes into impacting other players, if I'm over there cleaning the board for you, you guys need to come over here and clean these skulls for me, because I'm doing stuff for you as well. And you have to work as a team, and I think that is fantastic.
Yeah, and on top of that, I'm assuming you're giving this to Daniel, yes? Yeah. And so on top of that, I mean, you also have different quests that you can go on. And there's a companion quest where it will give you a benefit if you complete it. There is a corruption quest, or whatever it's called. It's a bad one. Where normally really bad things will happen if you don't deal with it. And then finally there's the main quest, which is you need to complete it. And they have a whole different slew of different things that they can do. And the fact that those, you can pick and choose which ones you can or should or shouldn't do in each of those, that adds to the tactics as well. It's massive. And it even has a dungeon crawl, like mini game thing going on in it, which is crazy in a game like this,
like,
right?
Am I going to go left, right, up, or down?
Yeah, exactly. And you're kind of like delving this dungeon, trying to find the right path and stuff. It's like, board games shouldn't be able to do that, and I love that. Meaningful choice. It's a huge Daniel for me.
All right, game immersion.
All right, game immersion breaks down three different parts. First off, is the game fun to lose? Are you going to have a good experience whether you win or lose at the game or not? Player interaction. What's the likelihood of getting table talk? Role playing. How do you feel like your character? And then those stand up memorable moments that we always talk about in games, where we're going to be telling people outside the game, even if they don't even know what the game is, or we're going to tell them about it. This has it in spades. The scenarios really add humor to it, add really cool flavor. I mean, it takes itself seriously, but it's silly at the same time. There's some ridiculous stuff happening, and you really do feel like you're building up this character. You're like, man, I'm just this brute. I'm going to run in there. You have a monster, don't worry about it. I'll punch him in the face. Like, I'll take care of him, no problem. And you feel like if you lose, you're like, man, we gave it our all, but we know where we could have improved. Let's go back. Next time we do it, let's knock this out. We got this. And you feel solid whether you have a great experience either way. So this gives to Daniel for me.
Is the game fun to lose? Yes. Yes, it is. I've lost it many a times. I've won it a couple times.
He has.
It is a fantastic game on that aspect because, going back to my earlier point in replay value, you don't seem the time sink that you put into this one. The player interaction is great in there. The table talk, you're worrying, you're getting into your character. It's not as good role playing as some other games that we've talked about, but that table talk and then the hearing the tower spinning and you're like, no, shine somewhere else. Don't shine here. Shine somewhere else. I have too much going on over here.
Yeah.
Plus, when you drop that skull in there.
Oh, everyone just waits for a moment.
Nothing happens. Oh god. Yeah.
Right,
so
we're good.
that memorable moments. I'll talk about my most recent play of this. We randomized everything. We randomized the big boss. We randomized all the characters that you're fighting against, because my buddy wanted to play a very hard game, co-op game. So we did that to him, and we won on the very last turn you could possibly do, because we were like, I don't know, because if a skull goes there, we lose that building, which means you get your last corruption. If a skull goes there, we lose that building, we get that corruption. I can't take any more corruption. And I was playing one of the expansion characters that could hold up to 3 corruption. And so it was at that moment, I was like, if this skull drops and you don't defeat this thing, we lose. And then he put in the last points that he needed to do. We hit it, and it's like, congratulations, and you're like, oh, and everybody sighed a relief, and you looked at the clock and it was like 3 hours. So yes, this is a big Daniel for me. This is probably the biggest Daniel for me.
Yeah, almost certainly. And finally, we have art and production. Now, art and production, again, some of it's subjective, but some of it's just, I mean, obvious how clear it is. This is the art, the pieces and components, and the graphic design. Those are our 3 sub-criteria. This, I'm going to start with the graphic design. The icons are very clear what you're trying to do. Even as far as the app goes, it's pretty obvious what you're going to be doing. The icons are actually so clear that they have parts of the tower. Those are called seals, where they reference which part of your board takes an extra resources to actually use, which is pretty cool. So that icon had to be clear in order for that alone to work. The art is fine. I like the cover. The clear parts of the box is pretty nice. It's a dual layer box, so it fits well. It seats in. The insert's really nice as well, and all of the art is very clear which monsters you're doing, and the art is good. I mean, I wouldn't say it's like something I would hang up on my wall or anything, but I do enjoy it. I think it's very clear. What makes this really good, the pieces and components, is the
component.
The component, yeah. The player minis, they even have like a nice wash on it. It's really beautiful. And the skulls are great. The buildings have a wash on it. Very good. Oh, yeah, there's also a tower in here. And this tower is the most advanced board game technology I have ever seen. I think that currently exists. And I don't think anything's going to come close to it. Not only does this tower sit booming in the middle, it is app integrated, meaning it connects Bluetooth. It has its own speakers. It has its own LEDs. It has its own sensors to detect the towers that are going into it. It keeps track of a lot of this stuff, and on top of that, has 3 separate servo motors that spin around to drop skulls out of certain parts of it. There is more tech in this board game than some computers have in their entire system. There is more technology in this than there was to land astronauts on the moon. And that is not a joke.
That is not a joke.
And not only that, the app development is really solid. It's amazing the amount of content that they put into it and the storylines and how everything coincides with each other to just an absolute perfect production. This has no bad parts of this production. It is perfect. Has a huge Daniel for me.
It also has a huge Daniel for me. The art is great. I like the grim, dark fantasy art as this gives you. Kind of gives you that on the darker side of the Lord of the Rings, more of the Nazgul than anything else. But I love that aspect of it.
Yep.
I love grim, dark fantasy books before they're hanged and stuff like that for Joe Abercrombie.
Yep.
Those are really good stuff. This has that kind of art that you would see in those kind of books, and it's fantastic. The graphic design, very clear, easy to understand. I love the player boards where it tells you this: you do this first, then you do, and this is optional. You do these, but you can't do 2 of these 3, but you can't do 2 of the same.
Yep.
And you do this. It basically tells you your turn down your board.
Yep.
Very simple.
Yep.
The app takes care of all the cleanup and tells you what's going on. This is what's busting. This is coming off. Now you have more chances of skulls of falling.
Yeah.
In the tower, there's what hasn't been said about this tower. It is one of the best pieces for any board games I have ever seen. We're not even mentioning the haggle dice because no one really ever uses it, but you can give yourself resources by rolling that die extra.
And the die is really nice marble color.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And if you get the grumpy guy, you don't get nothing, but it's only 1 out of the 6 dice faces, so that is fantastic. Great components, graphic design through the roof, art is fantastic. A big Daniel for me.
All right, so that gives us a total of 9 out of 10 Daniels between us. We hope you have enjoyed this review, and hopefully this will help describe whether you're going to like this game or not based on those criteria. So again, if you like any of our content, check out all of our other stuff. We stream on Twitch, we're on YouTube, we're on Instagram, we're on all of that. And comment down below on what you think about our review on Return to Dark Tower. That being said, I've been your host, Daniel.
And I've been your host, Daniel.
And we want to thank you for listening to Everyday Board Games.
Remember, every day is a good day for board gaming.